Welcome to the Octavius Gould Experience, and I am your host, Octavius Gould. And I have the pleasure of having as a guest with me today, Lena Ryals. And Lena, thank you for joining us. I am so excited to have a conversation with you about your journey.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for having me. I appreciate the invite.
Well, for the benefit of my guests who are either listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or watching on YouTube, I just want to give some insight into your impressive background.
Okay.
So, Lena graduated from Rutgers University, which I am very fond of because my nephew plays football there right now, and I'm from New Jersey. So it is the state university, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. The one and
So,
only. Not Trenton State, not the College of New Jersey, none of those.
and 80% of my audience probably resides in Philly and New Jersey. So they're going to be coming at me with that statement.
That's okay. They know the truth too.
And you've had an impressive career starting in corporate America, but now you are currently the CEO and owner of LMR Consulting Firm. So I definitely want to dive into your journey in corporate America, entrepreneurship, all the ebbs and flows that I know you've experienced as I did,
Yeah.
leaving corporate America to going to entrepreneurship. But let's start with your background as it relates to where are you from? Bring us up to speed as it relates to where you grew up and some of those
Sure.
lessons you've learned. Because I know being from Philly and New Jersey, I carry a lot of lessons that help me out as an entrepreneur from
Yes.
those times.
hmm Well, I was born and raised in Newark, New Jersey. And I actually have never left New Jersey, so I still reside in New Jersey. And went to college in New Jersey, right? So New Jersey is my home of homes of homes. um, I was born in Newark, New Jersey. I lived in the projects as a young child. I think when I was about 16 years old, my parents moved. But in my growing up, I always lived in two worlds. So I lived where I lived, but I was never educated where I lived.
Mm,
And so I always had a separate but equal experience of having friends where I lived at home, but then I went to school and had another set of friends and other experiences, right? And so my mom was very into educating us and making sure that we got the best things that we could. And so the school that was literally down the street from me was all of a 3-minute walk, was not good enough for her, for me.
mm,
And so in that time, you were allowed to go to school somewhere else if you went to a daycare there that was
mm.
local, right? And
Okay.
so there was a church across the street from Lafayette Street School in Newark, which was probably a 10-15 minute drive from where I lived. And my mom sent me to that nursery school, and that allowed me to go to the school across the street. And so I went to that school to eighth grade. And then I participated in a lot of higher education after school programs. One of them was a gifted and talented program out of University High School. And I attended that for a couple of years, maybe like seventh and eighth grade for sure. And they offered a summer program. And the summer program brought us to a school called Newark Academy in Livingston, New Jersey, which is a private institutional high school.
Mhm.
And they were giving, that year was the first year that they wanted to award a student a full scholarship, right? And so the program was probably, I don't know, maybe like 20 of us. And we went there, and while I'm a smart young lady and I wasn't a smart young lady, I was amongst people who were way smarter than me, right? Like way, way, way smarter in books, right?
Okay.
I always considered myself to be well-rounded, but not necessarily always the smartest, right? And so in that group of people, I went for the experience, right? I didn't go to think that in the end I was going to get this, because I knew Damon was way smarter than me, and I knew this other girl was way smarter than me, right? And this school was about academics, right? Like
Right.
top tier superiority of being, in academia. And the last day they had a ceremony and they called my name, and I was like, well, um, And Mr. Ball was the person who ran that program, and he was a humanities teacher. And he and I always stayed close. And I think either when I was towards the end of high school, or maybe I was just visiting. I know I remember asking him, I always was surprised that you chose me. Like, why did you choose me? Like, there were
Mhm.
so many other smarter kids. And he was like, because they were just smart kids. And we
Mhm.
wanted to really have someone, if we were going to do this, that would benefit from all the things we had to offer, not just come here and want to be stellar in academics, but also be able to socially adjust here, because that is a huge dynamic in those schools, especially when you're taking students from Newark, New Jersey and bring them up to a suburb environment, and having people that don't really look like you, right?
Mhm. Right.
But I had experienced that already because while I lived in Newark, New Jersey, while I lived in the projects, and that was predominantly Black and Hispanic, I went to the other side of Newark where it was Portuguese and Spaniards, not Puerto Ricans, but Spaniards, right? And all
Right.
those things were different, and they carried themselves differently. And so I was used to that dynamic of, being a single Black girl in the space, most of the time, right?
Right.
So, coming to that school was pretty much the same dynamic of, coming and being one of the onlys, not, in my grade for in particular, I turned out to be the only Black girl in that grade. And there was only one Black boy in my grade. That wasn't
Wow.
the dynamic for all the other grades. So before
Right.
me, there was a few of everything, of Black boys and girls. Below me, there
Mhm.
was, but in my grade, he and I were the only ones, to navigate that. So, that is where I grew up. And then I went to
Mhm.
Rutgers and spent my time there. And then from Rutgers, I started my career at Prudential. And I stayed at Prudential for 22 years. It was my only job, that I had, although
Okay.
I'm a hustler. So I also always had part-time jobs, because when I worked for the Knox Center there, we were on a 3-day, 13-hour work week. And
Mhm.
so I always had time. I had 4 days off, and so I would do
Nice.
side jobs. I also did, at some point in my career, I started doing, different things. And before I transitioned there to doing the Knox Center, I worked for Dow Jones. Like that was my intro to being in a Knox Center. And
Okay.
then when I couldn't do both jobs at the same time, worked part time at Prudential, doing 401k plans, and then working night shifts, at Dow Jones to try to transition my career. I found a space in the Prudential knock, and so I would have stayed there for 20 years.
Nice. Nice. Being from New Jersey, I was born in Philly, but my parents moved me to the countryest town in New Jersey at age 5. I can
Mm-hmm.
appreciate how being a hustler in New Jersey goes hand in hand, right? But
Yes,
I
yes,
but I have one important question for you that I'm going to ask you at the
sure.
start. Do you know how to pump your own gas? Because many people may not realize listening and watching this podcast episode that
We are one of the very few states that's still holding
right,
strong.
right. I think there are only
Um,
maybe two states
I
remaining,
think
if I'm
so. Just
correct, where
mhm.
you do not have to pump your own gas
It's
to the point
illegal,
where,
actually,
right, I was just
at
about to
least
say,
here.
I was at Wawa in New Jersey about 2 years ago, and I tried to pump my own gas because I was just accustomed to getting out and
Correct.
grabbing the pump. And I thought they were going to arrest me.
Yeah. Oh,
It
yeah.
was
It's the whole thing. But I do know how to pump gas because I'm a driver, so I like to drive other places, where it
Mhm.
makes sense. But I did not learn to pump gas until I was probably in my late 20s. Like, I always had somebody that knew how to pump gas with me if I drove out of state.
Right, right,
Um, and so, now I can consider myself an expert at it. But even sometimes I'm still kind of like, oh, well, what if this is not set up the same way that I'm used to, right? Even though a gas station is a gas station, it should be anyway.
right, right.
But yeah, there's lots of nerves around, going out of state. Who's pumping the gas?
Exactly. If I can piggyback off of that story, I want to tell you about another incident where they were pumping the gas for me. So I'm sitting in the car, and I guess after about 5 minutes, something kicked in where I told myself subconsciously, I guess, I need to go grab the pump, put it back, because it's done.
Right.
And I just ended up starting to drive off because I was just so confused and
Uh-huh.
almost drove off with the gas pump handle still in my
And
gas tank. So when I am in New Jersey, anything can happen when I get to that pump
yes,
because I'm just not accustomed to the days of growing up where everything was taken care of for you. Now it worked out well in the winter time, right? Where
of
you
course.
didn't have to
Oh,
get out of
yes,
your car.
for sure. For sure, I feel bad for them. I'm like, oh, I'm so sorry. But yes, can you fill it up with regular?
Here's another question I have for you about New Jersey. That experience growing up in New Jersey, a lot of people don't realize that it's called the Garden State for a reason.
Mhm.
That every town, every city doesn't look like Camden, right?
Correct. Yep. No, not Camden, not Newark. Everything's not an inner city. Absolutely. Lots
What
of
is it that
farm.
exactly, Blueberry Field?
Hmm.
What is it about New Jersey that has kept you there? Your passion for that wonderful state that I'm so fond of.
Honestly, I think what always has kept me here is just my family base is here, right?
Okay.
And so I don't know that there was ever a place that I visited where I ever felt like, oh, I would leave New Jersey to come here, right? Like I think for me, even now, like when people say to me, like, well, when you want to retire, where would you want to be? And I'm like, I actually don't even ask myself that question because there's never been a space where I felt like it's that much different from New Jersey outside of just a price perspective, right? Like, don't get
Okay.
me
Right.
wrong, we can all go live a great life in another state outside of New Jersey and these taxes.
Those taxes.
Um, but there's nothing that draws me enough to say, hey, this is much more beautiful, much more spectacular, has different things. And
Mhm.
I mean, and now what I think about, and if I ever even wanted to move, is I really have to look at the politics of the state now, which, I
Mhm.
don't know that we ever base our living decisions on those things, right?
Right.
Like, so I can go live in Texas and have a beautiful life, like literally, like probably double the size of a home that I have here.
Mhm.
Um, but they don't believe in my rights, right? As a female or my daughter and or her rights. And so I can't consciously move to certain areas anymore, even though they offer so many better things financially
Right.
that New Jersey, doesn't offer me. But I think when I was younger, I did want to move to Maryland, like a good core of my people, they started moving, Maryland, DC area. It just never turned out to be anything. Like I never looked for a job aggressively outside of that. And, I'm very much a routine person. So once I like a
Okay.
routine, I usually stick to it. And so New Jersey's been my routine for lack of a better word.
Okay. Well, I haven't lived in New Jersey for many years, but I still visit the state. I have a lot of family and friends in the area and a lot of people that I'm very fond of and close to. So
Hmm.
I enjoy going back and thinking about that. I grew up near Fort Dix McGuire Air Force Base, Fort
Okay,
Dix
yeah.
Army Base, McGuire Air Force Base. So I grew up in probably one of the most diverse towns because of the military kids
Military.
coming into our school system, which really allowed me to develop relationships easily once I got into corporate America. And you talked about as a youth being one of the only minorities or African American
Hmm.
females in your school system at one point. What did that experience teach you that allowed you to adapt in corporate environments where they may have been male dominated environments or there weren't people who looked like you?
Yeah. I mean, honestly, it was going to that high school was really like the first adult decision I ever made, right? Because it was a choice. Like, yes, I got something,
Mhm.
but it wasn't something I sought, right? So at the end of it, I was like, I don't know that I want to go here based on other dynamics, right? Not
Right.
just the academics. I wasn't really afraid of the academics. I actually was afraid of the class structure. Right? Like you don't know you're poor until you are pinned up against rich people, right? So you go all your life thinking your life is magnificent, right?
Right. Right.
And until you're introduced to, people who go on ski trips on a 4-day weekend every year for all of their life, right? Like I didn't do that. And so that for me was the fear, right? But I had also, like you said, I had always been in that space, right? And so I made a promise to my mom and said, okay, I'll try it. Because my answer was actually no. And then she was like, but this is really a great opportunity. And I said, okay, I'll try it. But understand that when I asked if I want to go, like you have to let me go, right?
Right.
Because I was slated to go to what was then considered one of the top schools in, I think it still is, but there was a science and math school in New Jersey, in Newark, Science High School.
Mhm.
And so it was, structured and had good academics tied to it. But it really did prepare me to come out and work. I mean, I worked in tech. I worked in a data center. I worked with all males, not just white males, but just all males, right?
Right.
I worked in a space where, you know, as a female, you can say the same things as the man just said to fix a problem, but nobody, for some reason, didn't hear you say the same thing or allowed you to take the credit for the win, right? So when you work in
Right.
a data center, you work for a knock center, we're dealing with Sev ones and twos, like the highest of priority of issues that can bring a whole network down, right?
Mhm.
And so, it always prepared me to be in that space. Um,
Mhm.
when I left high school, though, I will say I was challenged to figure out at Rutgers, where am I going to sit, right?
Mhm.
What seat at the table did I want?
Mhm.
Because you go onto a campus, it's a huge campus. It's 5 different schools put into one in New Brunswick and Piscataway, right? And I always had a mixture of friends at North Academy. In my home space, my friends were always Black and Hispanic. But
Okay.
when I went to college, I had to really make a choice of, am I going to continue this intermingling of people?
Mhm.
Because that was a different existence there. Or was I going to be amongst all of my people, like, and just stay and be a Black girl, like fully, like be a Black girl in that space. And I don't know, I think Rutgers chose it for me. So there's different places where you can live as a freshman. I didn't live on College Ave where it was more of a mixture of all of the types of students. I lived on Bush, and Bush was at that time in the 90s highly Black, right?
Okay.
A lot of us lived on that side. Most of it was engineering, a lot of doctors and engineers and all those things. And so it shows it for me in a particular way as far as where I landed, as far as living, right? Because going across the water on a bus every day, I didn't have to do that, but I would
Right.
have had to do that if I wanted to do that and live in that space, right? And then when you get into the real world, it allows you to navigate in a very particular way because you're not uncomfortable at first, right? Because if you've already experienced the discomfort, you're good. Like you're prepared. You're not taking off your game in a particular way. You know what people are prejudging in a particular way already. And so you go in the space sometimes to prove yourself, but other times to just show that you actually, you belong here. So yes, you may see me. Yes, I may be Black. Yes, I may be female. And yes, you may be thinking, oh, well, we don't have enough of you here. So you're here for that. Right.
Right.
And so I think that was the lesson that I learned, especially in high school, especially when I became a senior in high school. It was, oh my God, this is so impressive that you got into this school. And I was like, well, why would you use the word impressive? As if we all don't attend the same school, as if we all did not take the same classes. Yes, some of y'all took more, more elevated classes in something that I wasn't interested in. But, the language became different. It was like, oh, well, And then for my friend, he was a singer and he was Black and he applied to all the Ivies and because that was his dream. And when he got into all the Ivies and the people scheduled to get into all the Ivies did not, then it became, oh, well, we're Black and you're such a great singer, and all of the things that didn't matter because he couldn't go toe to toe with you in anything, right? Like he was well versed in all of the things. And so, as a child, you don't realize that it prepared you, right?
Right.
But then when you get in the world and you're like, oh, I've already dealt with someone that's like you. But as an adult, you have to, it lands a little differently, right? I think as a child, there is a level of resilience, right, that you have as a child when you experience those things. And as an adult, you're like, oh, I have to still do this. And so it's a little disheartening, but it is preparation.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And I work with a lot of successful women who talk about imposter syndrome that they've had to deal with in corporate America, especially in those male-dominated environments. How did you deal with that environment and still maintain your voice? Because a lot of women feel as if they lose the power of their voice, and you obviously haven't been extremely successful and maintain significant tenure within these organizations. How did you go about accomplishing that?
Um, I mean, I've always been vocal, right? So
Okay.
I've always believed in speaking the truth in a particular way. Have I always spoken it in the right way all the time? Probably not. But I was always a believer in standing up for what was right. And so while I lived in this male dominated space, no one ever stood up for us, any of us, right? We'd have a VP who would talk down to us like really disrespectfully. And I was like, you can't talk, like, we are adults. You cannot talk to us like that. And so I would challenge him in those ways, right? In ways I think that women are braver to do than men sometimes, right? Not from an ego sense of
Okay.
combating, right? But really being like, hey, like I'm asking a simple question. Yes, you're annoyed, but you don't have to speak like that. Like I would always try to get him to understand we actually represent you. You choose how we represent you in this organization because you are the head.
Right.
And, we are, yes, maybe if you want to consider us the tail, we're not, but we are the backbone, right? And so how we work, how we do, how we fix, all that is a reflection of you. And if you always are just talking down to us, no one wants to represent you. But we all had character in a very particular way where we also owned our work, right? Even though it was a reflection of him, it was still our work. And so we
Right.
weren't going to let it go down on the ship. The ship was not going to go down because of him.
Right.
But, imposter syndrome is real. I think why it ends up leaving Prudential, they had a package. And, I will say Prudential always served me well.
Okay.
I would say I didn't necessarily get all of the things I wanted in a career, but that wasn't strictly because of Prudential, right?
Okay.
So I had a person that reported to me towards the end of my tenure. And after I left, she goes, I never understand why you stayed here so long, right? And never got the accolades you deserved. And I
Mhm.
said, well, you know what? What was important to me at the time was I just became a mother. And I personally always wanted to be a mother first.
Mhm.
And whatever came after came after. Like I never
Right.
really never sought to be an entrepreneur. I never sought to be a VP at Prudential. I never
Mhm.
sought to do those things, even though I was trained to do those things from an education perspective, right?
Right.
And so I always knew I could do any of those things if I really wanted to. But who I wanted to be was a full-time mom. And who I couldn't be was a full-time mom. But Prudential allowed me that because I worked 3 days. And then for 10 years, and during those 10 years, I had my daughter, I worked nights. So
Wow.
my daughter never even understood I actually had a job until maybe Oh my gosh, she was born in 2012. I left what 2019, maybe 2017 when I actually decided to go back to days
So
is
she
when
thought
she
you were
was
like,
like,
and I apologize for interrupting you. She thought you
yeah.
were like Tommy on the sitcom Martin.
And so she never knew I had a job. Like she didn't because she would be to sleep at 7 o'clock at night when she was very young, wake up at 7 a.m. My shift was 7 a.m. to 8 a.m. And I worked from home a lot of those times too. Or she was with my parents for the evening times on the days I did
Okay.
go into the office. So she was always with family. She was never displaced. And so it was like, oh, I'm going to visit my nonna and pop on these days.
Mhm.
And then every other day I'm with my mom, right? And so it served me well. I
Nice.
cannot lie. But then as she got older, my desires started to change. And I was like, oh, let me see what I can do here. And so one of the reasons I did decide to take a package, because the package actually was not even a thought in my mind.
Okay.
Like I'm a single parent. I own a home. I have bills. I have a child to raise, right? And who am I to leave a job that is secure, that has health insurance, that has
Oh
all of
yeah.
these things, right? Like that just seemed absurd, just seemed not responsible, right, to
Right.
me. And so, but that's where for me sometimes that imposter syndrome falls. It's like,
Mhm.
I don't think I can or should be, or I'm supposed to be doing those things,
Right.
right? And so I have been, talked to about trying to grow me there and different things. And I was told, I remember specifically, like, hey, if you want this job, act like it's yours.
There you
And that's
go.
what I did. And then I got chastised for acting like it was mine because something happened and someone under me didn't like it. And they didn't like that I had pointed out that they were not really qualified in the way that we thought that they were qualified when they came into this organization.
Mhm.
And then I got chastised. And I remember sitting in the VP's office and I started to cry. And I'm not a
Mhm.
crier. Like I'm a crier at home in my own space, in my own business.
I
But
got
I'm
you.
not gonna I'm not gonna cry in front of you, like the VP
Entrepreneurs don't
of the
cry, right?
thing, right? And he was like, "Why are you crying?" And I was like, "You want an honest answer to that?"
Mhm.
And so he said, "Yeah, I mean, sure." I know he didn't, but he was like,
Right.
"Oh, why to ask?" Right? I said, "Because you told me to act like it was mine. I didn't do anything egregious here."
Mhm.
I said, "And if I were a man, you would not have talked to me the way that you just talked to me. And you would not have told me that I was misstepping in my space." I said, "But because a man came to you and didn't like what I said to him, this is a whole different conversation because I'm pretty sure if I was a man, this wouldn't have happened." I said, "But it's okay. My feelings are hurt, but it's okay." And then I think maybe a few weeks later, because the package hadn't really been announced. It was like the
Okay.
rumor of a package, right? And he had asked me, "Oh, do you plan on staying?" And I said, "Yeah, I don't. I'm not considering leaving."
Mhm.
And then that day, the notice dropped, and they were just trying to get rid of everyone. So it was like, hey, if you had a hire date of December 31st the prior year, you can go. And here's some extra money if you have a little bit of service. So we're trying to get you go. And so the next day I said, hey, I know I told you I wouldn't be leaving, but I'm going to leave. And he was like, really? What are you going to do? And I said, I don't know. Honestly, I don't. But what I do know is you're never going to make me whole and you're never going to fulfill your promises. I said, and what I know what you will ask me to do is what you already did was you gave the role that we talked about and you hired an outsider to come in and do it. And then you in the same breath asked me to help him be great. I said, and me helping him be great is what I'm going to do because I actually like him. He's respectable. I like him. And the game you played was not his fault. But I'm not going to grow here. There's no place for me to go. So I'm going to leave, and I don't have a plan. And I didn't like
At
I
that moment.
I had no plan at all. But
Now,
I know that good.
did you have that entrepreneurial spirit to where within yourself you were thinking one day I want to start my own business and do my own thing?
Absolutely not. Like, no, like seriously, like I started a company to encompass tax to kind of like cover because I didn't want to stay home and use the money they gave me to stay home.
Okay.
So you gave me a six-figure package, but I'm still gonna go work. And Lord knows I don't want all this to be taxed in a particular way, right?
Right.
That was the plan.
Right.
The plan was put this new money under a tax, somewhat of a tax shelter, which was just an LLC at the time, right?
Okay.
And that way you're not crying at the end of the year because Uncle Sam took all your money. All right.
Smart.
And honestly, I just thought when I started out, I was like, oh, I'll be a consultant in the literal form of a consultant, which was,
Okay.
especially in technology, right? They hire consultants, you stay on for 9 months to a year, you work a project, you go. I was just planning on working with recruiters. Hey, find
Okay.
me some work, get me a space, I'll sit in it for a little bit. I hear the money in consulting is good. Let's try it. That was it.
Okay. Okay. Which is not very unusual because many entrepreneurs fall into it by mistake or are pushed into it. Unlike myself, where I knew I wanted to be a business owner even when I was
Right.
in high school, and I had that entrepreneurial spirit, which showed up. It showed its face many times in corporate America, which is why I didn't stay at organizations as long as you
Right.
did.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of entrepreneurs who I've had on my podcast or I've met over the years fell into it very similar in the manner in which you did. So as you start this journey into business ownership and entrepreneurship, what were some of the challenges you had to overcome and some of the biggest surprises?
Well, I think to go back to your question, maybe like one or two ago about imposter syndrome, right? I think for me, it was heaviest then,
Okay.
right? Because it was like my first client that I got on my own without a recruiter. When I decided, like, hey, I think this could be a business, right? Like, I'm for sure not doing 8 hours of work in any space I'm sitting in, right? Um, and so I can have multiple people that I can work for, right? That can fill an 8 to 10 hours a day for me. Um, and when I first started working for BRBS World out of Ohio, originally, like her job description was a project manager, but it was an elevated one in which, she was a small business owner. She owned a little boutique firm, and everybody was a consultant, and she needed someone to help her with her project, help her manage deliverables, all of those things, right? And so that's what we agreed upon. I was excited because she worked in a great space. And then when I started, she goes, oh, well, I'm going to give you the COO title. And I was like, why would you do that? So she said, no, I think, I want you to like take on some of the business things, do the things that we discussed to do with me, but also make sure the business is doing the things that it needs to be doing, right? And I was like, and my stomach got all crazy. And I was like, because at this point, I'm thinking I have to tell her no. And because
Okay.
if this is what she really wants, I have to say no because I don't know what to do in that space. Like I'm not a COO. I didn't, it wasn't even like I came from a C-suite role, right?
Right.
Um, I had some sense of a leadership role, but I didn't come from a C-suite role. And I think when we think C-suite, we think all of this education, we think all of this time spent, all of this experience, right?
Right.
All of the things like, oh, these people are reading the latest and greatest of and the magazines and all of this stuff, right? And she and I are talking, and she says, "Listen, I trust in this thing." She's like, "I don't really trust in a lot of people." She goes, "But based on the little bit of that we've been doing and the things that you come with me with, um, I trust this choice." And I said, okay, here's what I'll do. I'm going to be very upfront that I'm not comfortable. But if you're okay with me being uncomfortable and working my way through it, I'm happy to do it. And if you are dissatisfied, then we can talk. Please, let's talk about it. And then from there, we decide whether, I just go completely or we just do what we had on the schedule to do originally. Um, and then I started, working as a COO, and I was like, oh, do the project.
This isn't
and
bad.
and who are you? The Supreme Project Manager. Like, so it was just getting out of my own way, getting out of my own thoughts of that. And once I started doing that, I was like, oh, and LMR Consulting then became a business. And
Okay.
it was not a business of consulting. It was a business of, hey, I'm a fractional COO and I am in the business of helping small businesses deal with operations. And you and I will figure out what that looks like for your business, right? What
Right.
it looks like for your budget, and look at the goals that you want to do, right?
Right.
And look at your teams if you have a team. So the dynamic of customers looks very different for me. Some people are solopreneurs and just need somebody. Some people have a team, but they just do the work, but they need somebody that's an intermediary, right? And
Right.
so I started marketing myself as the right hand person. Like I'm the right hand that you need, right, in your business for you to do what you want to do as a business owner and for your company to get to where it wants to be going.
And Lena, what I found really intriguing when I was perusing your background, and I've known you for a few years. We've been connected on LinkedIn. I've been following your success and looking at your post on LinkedIn, is the fact that you actually started your company, LMR Consulting Firm, January 2020.
Oh yeah, and then there's
You know,
that.
the one thing that I laugh about when I'm talking about business, especially with aspiring entrepreneurs, is that timing is everything.
Yes,
Because I've read that it's made the biggest difference in the success of entrepreneurs. Did they make that decision in a timely fashion? Did that decision align with the economic conditions? And many times we don't know, but at the
yes.
end of the day, the timing is everything. So you start your business January 2020. 2, 3 months later, we are in the middle of a global pandemic. What was that experience like? How did you navigate it and then come through it?
It honestly, it was my first experience in faith, like the whole process, right? And so growing up, I had never been religious. I didn't know God in a particular way. I think I was like, surface level, like, oh, thank you, God, thank you. But credit to me for studying hard and doing the things, right? And when I made the choice to leave was in 2019. Um, and that choice came easily. Like choices for me don't come without a plan, right?
Okay.
So if there's no plan there, I'm not doing it. Like I'm just not. Like that was just my personality. Um, so in November of 2019, God said, I need you to move. And I was like, I can't. Like for all these reasons, right? I can't. And he said, but you asked me for something this year. And I said, oh yeah, what did I ask him for? Right? And so I had asked for cash, right? I had been recently divorced and I just needed to stabilize some things, right? Nothing outrageous, but I did need a good amount of cash that I wanted to just start a clean slate. And he goes, cash is on the table right here. And it's actually more than you need. And I was like, oh, he's right. Like, this is what I asked for, but it wasn't what I wanted it to look like,
Okay.
right? And so that was the lesson for me that in that 2019 phase, it was you don't need a plan. You're on a spiritual journey with God, and God has told you to move. And when God tells you to move, the obedience should follow, right? Not that you can't question, not that you can't feel fear, but when I woke up the next day and felt no angst in my body, of which when I don't have a plan, my body is completely angst. I was like, okay. So I not only started a business in 2020 of January, so because that was me prepping for my departure in February.
Okay.
So I actually didn't leave Prudential until February 19th of 2020.
Okay.
I found a job through a recruiter. I left on a Wednesday, I think it was. I had a job by Friday. I started that job March 1st. The pandemic was 2 weeks later.
Amazing.
And I was like, oh my God. Like I can really be out here without a job. Like for real now, without a
Right.
job, because now the world is shut. And thankfully I would landed where I landed. They kept me for a year. Um, and I knew it wasn't a space that I wanted to stay in, but I was willing to try to start building my business differently, like trying to make him a client of mine, not through a recruiter, because we both had fulfilled our obligations under the
Okay.
recruitment contract, right?
Okay.
And that didn't pan out. But then what panned out was my client in Ohio, who is probably known to be very tough um, in the space of working and trusting and not just picking anybody to like represent her, right? Um, but a beautiful spirit of a woman, right? Who taught me so much and who gave me this opportunity to say, hey, I see something different in you, right? And so this whole thing has been a faith journey, like by far, even within these last 5 years, right?
Right.
When I first started, it was magnificent. Like I was like, how come I never thought to do this? Like this is great,
It's
right?
perfect.
It was the first time I had ever really been myself
Okay.
working, right? Whereas I had been asking people to, hey, do you not see me? Like, this is what I'm good at. Let me do this. And
Right.
always being told no, right? Or no, this is not part of your job description. Okay, okay, okay. It was the first time I had ever felt like myself. And it also was the first time I actually worked predominantly with Black females
Okay.
because that had never been my world ever, not school, not work, nothing. Just my social life had been that.
Okay.
But this was the first time I had ever worked with, I had a whole roster of Black female business owners, a whole roster. I think I had six at a time at the highest, right?
Mhm.
Um, all different, all magnificent, all great businesses, right? And all taught me little different things about myself and how I wanted this role that I sit and project out as a service to really look, right?
Right.
So, and each part of it is just faith, right? Like faith that I'm doing the work that God has called me to do. And sometimes I think we think that that is grandiose, right? Like, oh, I'm here to save the babies of the world. If that's your calling, that is great. But that's not the only thing that wraps calling, right? Like I am in all the spaces I sit in as a mother, as a friend, as a daughter, as a sister, I am the organizer of the thing. And I get lucky in this space to be that as my job, right? As my living, as my business model, right? I get to do what I love to do. And then the other side of my brain that is very creative, when I get to partner with people who own marketing firms, have a PR firm, sell coffee, I get to use the creative part of my brain to look at the things and say, oh, I like this, but maybe we should do that, right? Um, so when I can marry all the things, right? And in corporate America, I don't know that there's very few people I can think that can say they can marry all the things that make their brain happy, right?
Correct.
Because you're kind of pigeonholed in some respects to this job description, the requirement, right? Um, and so, it has made me the most tremendous believer in faith, right? Because I started here not knowing anything, but just moving, right? And learning the lesson that, you know, even in the tough season, like 2025 has been the worst year of business for me, the worst. but it has been the most faithful business year for me, right?
So it sounds to me as if you rely on your faith, and then at various times you tap into a reserve of optimism as well, like you have in 2025.
Yeah. I mean, I don't even know if I would let you say that 2025 was optimistic. And I don't want to lie on this show. Um, 2025 was a different level of faith, right?
Okay.
It was really just trusting, like trusting that, you know what, when I looked in February and said, ooh, I hope by March something comes through. Because if it don't, I don't know what this world will look like, right?
Right.
Um, and then something came through. Like it is amazing when you think that it's not going to happen, but you're still trying to be hopeful and faithful in the
Right.
space, right? And so 2025 was really God showing me who He is and asking me to come closer and just put it there, like put it there. I know in March you're gonna have a $0 balance. I know you have gonna have a $0 balance. But what's gonna come through will carry you for as long as you need it to.
Right.
And it did. And it is the most mind-blowing thing I have ever experienced, right? Because you think of these things and you hear people talk about it, but until you really experience it for yourself, um, and so it's just been a reaffirming year, right? And so then I started talking differently and I started walking and then I started doing all these other things that I wouldn't have done if I was busy and more successful, right? I wouldn't have started walking 5 miles a day, looking at the sky, trying to find images. So like I really enjoy photography.
Okay.
And it's something that I stopped doing for a really long time. And so from May until probably last month, like I go and I look for the things in the sky and it allows me to share with my network of people, right? Share it with my friends. So I have one group chat and we share certain things and I call it a peekaboo series where I
Okay.
find the sun amongst something, but you see the sun so clearly. It's like a bunch of trees, but you see the whole circle of the sun, right? And then I just have, my sunrise series, share with another group of friends. So everybody has a little part of how I do my day, right?
Gotcha.
In some particular way. And I don't know that I would have done that, right? And I do think that those things are God's calling, right? Reminding people of the beautiful things that happen every morning that we miss because most of us are sleeping. I wake up early. That's just part of my training in childhood too,
Okay.
unfortunately. But I'm a 5 a.m. waker, and by 8 o'clock, I've probably done majority of the things that somebody took all day to do, right? But that's just how I'm built. But I get to see the sun, right? So I get to see it starts dark at, well, now it's, 6 o'clock. It's still a little dark. But then I blink 2 times and now the sun is coming up. And now I see oranges and pinks and all of these hues. And then it ends up being a blue sky. Like that's magic
Exactly.
that we miss every single day. That
And
we miss.
you're appreciating those little things in life that sometimes we take for granted
Yeah.
until we have those pause moments that you talked about.
Yeah.
As we get closer to wrapping up the show, and first of all, thank you for being on the show again and sharing so
Yeah.
much
No, thank
great
you for having me.
information. Talk to
You are
me.
my first podcast, I will say
Are you
too. So thank
serious?
you.
See, I am
Absolutely.
honored. I am absolutely honored. I'm quite sure
Because
after.
this is also one of my fears. So thank you.
See, that's what I do. I put people right out there, especially being from New Jersey. You should have no fear because
I
that's
should. You're
part.
right.
Exactly. That's that Jersey girl that
Yes.
my sisters and other women from New Jersey talk about. They're Jersey girls. They have no fear,
Right.
right? they
Yes.
fear pumping the gas, but that's about it.
That's it.
Talk to what you do with your business, the value proposition that you provide to your clients, and what type of clients you look for and who you actually serve.
Great. So, I offer time, right? And I know that sounds weird, but as a CEO who is wearing all the hats, you want time, and you want time in different respects. So I had a client who never really had family time because she always was every vacation, still working, not trusting, couldn't hand off, couldn't do this, right? Then I have other clients that say, I'm doing all the day-to-day stuff. I can't go out and get new business. Like I need new business, but I can't go out because there's a fire when I woke up this morning that I have to take down, or I'm putting this off to the weekend. So now I don't have a weekend because I'm putting it off, or I put it off to the weekend. And because I do on a weekend, now I still haven't done it, right? Or they have teams and the team is so reliant on them. They don't move without them. And so what I offer is that capacity, right? I give you capacity back, capacity to do what it is that you deem important in your business, right? And not just your business, but your life. Because when you're an entrepreneur, this is your life. There is no vacation you go on that you're absolutely not working, right?
Right.
Even myself, like I do a little bit in the morning, I do a little bit at night. So I'm not totally out of the mix, but during the day I'll focus. But time is important. Like that's the one value that you can't get back. And I am that intermediary. So I am that right hand person, right? Coming in. I always say, like when I talk to people and they're talking to me, I'm like, I sell trust. I need you to trust me. And if you don't, then this will not work because you will not let go of the reins, right? You will still be there. Now you're just also micromanaging me. And I'm not here to be micromanaged. I'm here to alleviate the micromanaging, right? I'm here to go through and be a thought partner and say, hey, here's what you're pricing all your things at. Why? Do you think it's fair? Do you want to go up? Do you know what it means to go up? Your contracts are coming up for renewal. Do you know it? Should we be changing pricing? Right. So
Right.
when you're a solopreneur or just a CEO without other C-suites under you, you're not asking it. No one is giving you that, right? Because a lot
Right.
of times when you have teams, and this is not no disrespect to any team member, but they're not challenging you enough to make those higher level business decisions for your company, right? I sat in a space and actually my first client, and she was like, thank you. One day she said thank you to me. And I said, oh, okay, you're welcome. I said, what are we thinking? Like, what are we talking about? And she goes, you don't yes me. And I go, oh, okay. But that's not my personality, right? So I didn't
Right.
think anything of it. And she goes, and that's what I'm grateful for. Like you challenge me, but most people will yes me because, they, she has lots of prestige in her industry and all these things. And I said, I'm not looking to really challenge you. I just like to ask questions sometimes because if I have it, someone else might have it. And so that's what we sell here. And we sell it in different ways. Like I personally serve as the fractional COO leg of this business. But I also have a project management team, right? So if you don't want, can't afford, or don't need a COO, but you have projects, and the projects usually are not part of any one person's real job description, right?
Right.
Especially the projects that concern the business leg of your stuff, right? And so it can look like coming in and just serving to do projects, right? Do you have SOPs? Do you have an employee handbook? Do you have all these things, right? Because also in the same breath, I have clients that say, I need new business, I need new business. And I go, but what if you got it? You don't have the resources to maintain it well. So we don't want to tarnish the name just for the sake of getting business.
Right.
So part of operations is cleaning that up. What don't you have? Do you want to sell your business? Do you have documents that someone is going to ask for? And if you don't, do you realize how long it's going to take? Because once you say to somebody, I want to do X, and you are not prepared to do it, your value goes down.
Right.
Each day it takes you to get them what you said you already had, right? And so that's a deal off the table either way, whether you're selling a business or trying to get new business, right? If
Right.
it's something you're just saying yes to be saying yes because, that's how sometimes we get as entrepreneurs, well, I'll just take it, right? Sometimes we have to just say no because it's going to burn you out, it's going to burn your team out, and the value of the work is not going to look good. And so they're never going to call you to do anything else that you're actually probably really good at to do, right? Um, so it's time and trust for me, right?
I
And
love it.
so if I'm out at a social event, I talk about trust. Like that to me is the talking point that I want to relay. Like, hey, and I don't just partner with anybody. So, it is about how we speak, what we do, what I look at, how I see it. Because everybody wants an operations lead, but they also want a new space to dump in sometimes, right? And operations is not a dumping ground. Yes, we may not make you money in sales, but we make you money by being efficient, by building your team, by cleaning everything up, right? And sometimes people just want to dump HR related things into, operations. I'm like, this
Right.
this is not it. Right. So I try to take those spaces of where I want to be fractional and really, build a partnership. So for me, it's, really about building that partnership.
I loved how you touched on the fact that there are a lot of people with the perception that operations will not make them money, but you outline exactly how it could
Right.
in a level of efficiency and creating processes and structure. What
Mm-hmm.
advice would you give as we end for women out there? You mentioned being a single mother who had to navigate raising your daughter who is now what age?
13.
13. What advice would you give other women who are in similar situations in navigating that decision if they should step out on their own, stay within corporate America, and they're just dealing with a tremendous level of uncertainty?
Mm-hmm. I'm always a believer that what's for you is for you, right? And so if you're a prayerful woman, I think that you should pray because God will tell you yes or no. And you have to trust what you feel. But what you feel is the Holy Spirit, right? And sometimes like, oh, my tummy's upset. No, it's him telling you no.
So don't go for
I'm
that
just
ginger ale.
nervous. It's not always that though. It's not always bad. It's not always good, right?
Right.
Um, but it really is a journey that you need to do. And sometimes, we have to, sometimes you can walk blindly if that's how you're made up. Most people can't. Um, and if you can't, then try it. Like build yourself an LLC to start and consult yourself out, right? Can you still hear me?
Yes.
Okay. And consult yourself out and just do it here and there and see if you like it. Because other times we build businesses that we think we'll be great at and we don't like it. You don't want to go from one scenario to the next and not like it and
Right.
it be yours, right? If it's yours, you should have a love for it and really want to do it. And if it's yours and if it's the plan, it all will work itself out. The clients will come, the money will come, the experience will come. And, you just have to put yourself out there and trust that what it is that you want, it will happen.
Great advice. Lena, you were excellent. I truly appreciate you being on. How can people get in touch with you, whether they want to learn more about you or maybe even potentially do business with you?
Yeah, so I have my website, lmrconsultingfirm.com. I actually just revamped it, which I'm really excited about.
Oh, nice.
And so they can reach me there. There's a little form you can fill out there. I'm on LinkedIn as Lena Ryals. You can look me up there, read some of my stories, and look at my experience there. And where else? I don't have any social media attached to my platform just yet, but those are the two places that you can book some time with me. My calendar link is on the website for sure. And if you want to schedule some time, I'm happy to talk to you.
Okay. And can you spell that website? Because I want to make sure people actually know how to
Sure.
find you for those people who may have missed that.
That's fine. It's www.lmr consulting, consulting firm, firm.com. And then my name is Lena, Lena, and Ryals, Ryals.
Excellent, excellent. For those who listen or watch this podcast episode, thank you for tuning in. Lena, thank you for being a
Thank
guest.
you.
I truly enjoyed our conversation, especially
Yes.
since we have that Jersey connection.
Absolutely.
We
It
didn't
was
talk
5 years in the making, but we got here.
Absolutely, absolutely. And that's what it's all about. You know, I tell people all the time, when you initiate relationships, you have to put in the work to maintain and
Mhm.
develop those relationships. And here we are 5 years later, having this great, compelling conversation that I know my audience will appreciate. So thank
Thank
you.
you. Thank you for thinking of me. I really do appreciate it. And thank you
Absolutely.
for getting me to do something I had said I would not do and was not interested in doing. But I've had a grand old time here. So thank you.
I'm an executive coach. I got to get people out of their comfort
Yes,
zone. That's
you
what I
do.
do. That's what I do.
And you do it
So
well, my friend.
thank you very much. So for everyone tuning in, please hit like and share this podcast episode. Follow it so that you can be entertained by other amazing guests as you were, I'm quite sure, with Lena. Thank you again. Everyone have a great day.